With dry amanita, like you have it here, I made oil applied to certain part that I had pain, and it just went away. That's amazing.
I'm here today with Irene Dubin, who is a psychedelic psychotherapist now who I have worked with. Was born in Ukraine, grew up in Siberia in the Soviet Union, but then actually worked as a pharmacist. She's very familiar with drugs and how they interact with the body, and then later in life, I thought it was an interesting transition. She started working in the addiction space and helping people get over addictions, and then that has then migrated into psychedelic psychotherapy and the use of different compounds, including mushrooms, which we'll talk about today. I think we should just dive right into this. I have a little pack of Siberian amanita here. I got that because I knew that would be closer to home for you. I know fairly few people who use amanita. I made the amanita video and a lot of people came out of the woodwork and said that they use it, which I think is so interesting. And then more recently, a book came out under the name Baba Masha, and it talked about a Russian study that was undergone that asked people questions of how they use Amanita muscaria. You've been giving lectures on that study, and you know Baba Masha. Maybe you can kind of just fill us in on what we know because of how Russians are using Amanita muscaria.
So the Russian name for amanita is muhamor, means kills the flies. Muha, it's fly, muhamor. So it kills the flies. When I grew up, we never used amanita because we knew it's very powerful and poisonous mushroom.
This new study, this Russian study, seems to show that there are a lot of beneficial effects. So maybe it'd be worthwhile just briefly to give us your understanding of how the data was collected for the Russian study and then what it's telling us. And then we can talk about how you use it too.
In a study, it's like a survey study, self-reported survey. And she specifically created certain questions that people will answer how amanita affected them for specific indications. Let's say you have a blood pressure, or you have depression, or you use alcohol and you want to stop, so you have some addiction problem. So you will do the microdose and then tell Baba Masha how it's affected you and how long you've been taking. So based on that information, she would analyze that, all the data that came from 12,000 people, like by now. And then she put in a book everything that people report to her, the best, effects. And just according to her book, let's say for depression, it was almost 80% of people had alleviated the symptoms of depression.
Meaning so they made the depression better.
They have,
is that right?
Right. Yeah. It helped with depression, so they felt much better after microdosing. And let's say with addiction, like 70 or 80% help with addiction, not just alcohol, but any other drugs as well. That it's fascinating. Analgesic properties, topical help with pain, chronic pain, but some people, said that with let's say chronic pain and different type of let's say arthritis or inflammation or anything that causing pain, it's not gonna remove the cause, but alleviate the pain. That's interesting. And how we just guessing right now, because we know how ibotenic acid affect us, we know how muscimol affect us, right? But how it's actually work and why we have such a positive effect, I don't know if there is any study.
Well, and this to me seems like the first indication is it helping, and what things? People are reporting, self-reporting, that these are the benefits. And I think it's important to understand where the harm is, to what are the dangers, and that allows more study. Because up until now, it seems like everyone thought it was just toxic, and nobody had done any research. So this is the very beginning, and I find it fascinating that there's even numbers on it. You know, so between 3,000 and 12,000 people, depending on which reports you're looking at, have now reported. And those numbers with, what is it, addiction, depression, relief of pain and swelling, what were some of the other
there's
things?
so many other, like inflammation, helping with the skin conditions, different, like even burns. You put some oil, you can make tincture and oil with the amanita, all the recipe in the book, and you can apply, use as a topical application overnight and help with different skin conditions, even with the pain as well. So I know how it's helping, I can say from my own experience.
Oh really? How do you use it?
And we used oil out of that plant. So it's very popular in Russia, buckthorn oil.
Okay.
And it has already properties to heal, like any, skin like cuts or any sore on your skin, it will heal. But I made with dry amanita, like you have it here. I made oil, so with amanita, dry amanita, and just applied to certain part that I had pain, like my knee, my wrist, overnight, and it just went away. That's amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna have to try that more. I think I haven't tried it. Okay, so let's. The benefits. You have a list. You have a list there.
Yes.
Is it worth? Let's just read down the list, and then I want to kind of talk about things that it maybe shouldn't be used for.
So I would say it works as a neuromodulator or immunomodulator. It helps with so many different problems. Like indications could be, again, we're not prescribing that, but we're saying what's been reported from other people, and indications could be anything from depression, anxiety, chronic pain, skin conditions, addiction, migraine, some menstrual cramps, some hot flashes with menopause, and any other conditions that, for example, for some people who been diagnosed with, let's say, Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, it helps with certain symptoms. It's not going to heal you completely, but help you with certain symptoms, like with a tremor, less tremor, or you feel just better in your mood, like mood stabilized properties. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's so. Tell me the things that wouldn't help. What are the contraindications?
Okay, so definitely you don't want to use if you have any psychiatric problems, like serious problems. So you're not advised to not use that. And
so that would be bipolar, schizophrenia.
Yeah,
Those are
something
the
like that.
ones,
Yeah,
right?
like psychotic conditions. Some, so not to use when you're pregnant or you breastfeed or you have, let's say, kidney problems. So that probably not a good condition to start using microdose.
Okay.
So with other, again, you need to calibrate, you need to try and titrate how much you need to take. But in a book, Baba Masha MD suggests 0.5 gram, the maximum.
That's
One
0.5 gram fresh or
dose
0.5 gram
of the
dried?
dried mushrooms.
Okay. And then you would eat that every day.
You can take in the morning or in the evening or both. And again, you will calibrate and you can see how it's affecting you. If it increase your blood pressure or you start feeling agitated, so then stop or just remove from in the morning, do in the evening or vice versa. Because some people report that they have better sleep, so restoring healthy sleep cycle. So then you can take in the night if you feel like it's helping you. because if you take in the morning and feel sleepy, it means it's not good for you.
So this, I think, is something that's very foreign to people, which I discovered with Amanita, is this ability to listen to my own body. So I did my first testing of Amanita on myself a year ago, mixed up a batch, small T, and then found my lower dose, so kind of where my microdose is, where I felt an effect, and then kind of worked up to maybe a middle dose, and then kind of decided that I didn't want to go any higher than that. But trying to listen to my body was new, and I think a lot of people might have this feeling, especially if you grow up not with parents that are naturopaths or herbalists or something, you go to the doctor says take these pills every day, and that's how you do it. And even if you don't feel good, you keep on the regimen that the doctor says until you go back and maybe explain to them, but you don't see them very often. And so this idea that you're in control of what you put into your body and you need to listen to it, and that your body could heal itself, is a little bit foreign. This is such a fascinating thing because it seems to help a lot. And I think that would maybe raise a lot of people's alarm bells. It's like, oh, it's used for everything. Also interesting that it seems to have this, you call it immunomodulation, or just ability to get the body back to balance. How do you recommend people, or do you recommend people maybe try microdosing on this?
I mean, I would be very skeptical as a pharmacist first, and then psychotherapist. I am skeptical on everything and anything that's not really proven scientifically. So I would say following the harm reduction method. So do not harm. So if you feel like nothing else helping you, try that remedy, and try very, careful. So start with very small dose, and again, where you're gonna get the mushrooms, you need to find them. If you're not an expert, how are you gonna find the right one? Because Amanita could be, it's easy to find, but there is other mushrooms that look like Amanita but more poisonous. And you need to make sure that you find right mushrooms, you prepare right way.
See, I think this is really important to point out, because I'm originally a biologist and kind of really interested in the taxonomy. You gotta kind of get into mushrooms a little bit first before you just go randomly experimenting. I think that's a fair point for everyone. I don't think it's useful though to tell people never try mushrooms at all, because there's so many benefits. Here's a good example. Amanita, I would say, Amanita muscaria, one of the easiest to identify. Red, white spots. However, if it's not red, those are the deadliest. So the death caps, destroying angels. Definitely don't try that if it's not red. And then you can also have like brownish red and white spots, and that's a panther cap. So if you got to try to at least figure some of those out, then you can try. But just this idea, kind of getting back to kind of this harm reduction, you can start trying very small doses, and if it doesn't work for you, then you can stop, right?
So if it does work for you, you don't need to go longer than a couple of weeks. So you do for a couple of weeks, and then you stop. And then you observe, like you said, listen to your body, observe yourself. If you see any difference, let's say you take it for depression, you did 2-3 weeks of microdose with Amanita, and then you stop and you see how you're gonna feel in other couple weeks. If you feel the symptoms still there, so then you can do another cycle, another 2-3 weeks with Amanita microdose, but then no longer than that. So then you need to stop and just take a break. Maybe do that once a year as a maintenance.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think we're still a little bit early in figuring out what is the optimal thing. But my take home from reading the book and then talking to others is you gotta more or less figure out how it works for you, right? Like, especially with this one, it's not like we don't know exactly when to take it, and everybody seems a little different too, right?
Right, so I would say, as we all very complex biochemical machines, right? We have our own, so many chemicals, neurotransmitters, hormones, everything what the brain produces. The Amanita will work specifically for you in that specific way that you will see if it's helpful, healing, or maybe detrimental. So you need to be the judge and decide if it's helpful or not, and be very careful with its dosage.
And I think that makes sense, although when you first hear it, it seems like that wouldn't make sense. But some people, for instance, are highly anxious. They would need to be that needs to be pulled down. Or if you're, I don't want to say depressed, but depressed in a way where it's hard to get up. You don't have anxiety, depression, but it's like then you need to be pulled up, right? So that's how it could work for different people. Different people need different things to bring back to what is a nice static state.
That's right. And what's interesting about Amanita, other alkaloids, muscarine, right? That the name came from Amanita muscaria, muscarine. So we have in our body, we have muscarinic acetylcholine receptors. That's the interesting that it came from the name of Amanita, the same ingredient that found in Amanita muscarine. Right. We have receptor sites called muscarine acetylcholinergic that will, if you, so that certain drugs will excite those receptors, and it will actually affect your nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system, and has calming effect on your nervous system. Mm-hmm. So, but in the reverse, the other compound in Amanita has opposite effect. So you can see how tricky the mushroom is, having both compounds, both alkaloids that affect you as a can make you calm or can make you actually very agitated. Yeah.
There are so many different compounds in the mushroom, right? And for people that are unfamiliar, you kind of just described it, but you got mostly ibotenic acid, which is the up, muscimol, which is the down, and then muscarine, which is similar. And then there's a lot of other compounds which are still unknown. So when you're taking this mushroom, there are some unknown quantities in the mushroom, because each mushroom can be a little bit different. And then depending on how you treat it and dry it, whether that's you're making a tea or you're eating fresh ones, that changes the balance too, right? Between the up and the down. So that can be challenging. So to me, it feels like this is like, I don't want to say it's an advanced mushroom, but because I think if you start microdosing, you can start low and you can get into it. But there's a lot here when it comes to how does it exactly work. What about macrodosing? Like, does it seem from the Russian study that it's beneficial to then also experiment with high doses to try to get benefits out of it?
I mean, historically speaking, we have people who been taking Amanita muscaria in a big dose for altered state consciousness and having some kind of insights. But in my opinion, it's very toxic, even though you may have hallucinations, you may have some insights from that trip. The dangerous part and harm probably outweighed. So I wouldn't recommend to anyone to do this, as a macro dose use.
So if someone wants to get a hold of you, you can go to theblueportalretreat.com, because that's where you guys lead retreats. And then if they want to talk to you as a therapist, where do they go?
psychedelicsintegration.com. If they want to book session with me, I'm working online on Zoom because we travel a lot, so mostly.
I'm leaving links to all of the things that Irene is doing down below too, so follow up on those. and we have lots more videos planned. Long talks like this as a podcast, so stay tuned. Anything else you'd like to say?
I wish everyone healthier new year, and if you really need to do the treatment with psilocybin, consult with your physician or therapist, or reach out to us and we can give you free consultation. Definitely is something that we can help you with.
Awesome. Thank you, Irene.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Okay.